Okay, so today we're going to be learning about essentially the quick and dirty way for absolute beginners to start 3D design, essentially using other people's designs and using basic shapes in order to create something without the need of SolidWorks, without the need of any kind of knowledge of 3D design. So the first thing you're going to want to do is head on over to TinkerCAD.com. Yes, we're going to be using TinkerCAD because I use it all the time for super simple things that just need to be done quickly without the hassle of SolidWorks. Additionally, it's right in the browser, so it can be used on your phone even. It can be used on tablets and laptops that don't necessarily have very good processors and graphics cards in them. It's super easy to use. So you're going to go ahead and create an account if you don't already. Just a reminder that it's going to be the same email and password as your account with any other Autodesk products. So that includes Autodesk Inventor, AutoCAD, and other Autodesk products. All right, so once you've created your account, you're on your main page. I've got a ton of different random designs in here just because I use it all the time for all sorts of random stuff. I'm going to go ahead and press Create New Design. And then it's going to bring me to a blank work plane. So our work plane is essentially as it states. It's going to be, where we're creating our object. You can right click and hold to move it around. To select things, we left click and hold. To zoom in and out, you can zoom in and out, or you can scroll. If you want to get to a certain view really quickly, like if I want to get to a top view, I can press this. If I want the side view, or maybe the bottom view, I can also drag this little cube around to get, the exact angle I want, which is more important when we have things on here. It's easier to see. And if I ever want to, if I'm too zoomed in or I'm too zoomed out, I can just press the home button. It'll bring me right back to this view. Additionally, if I have multiple objects on here and I want to zoom into this square because maybe I want to make some modifications but I can't zoom properly, just click on the object you want to zoom in on, so maybe this one, and press this little square button. You can also press F, and it'll automatically fit this as the center of your view, essentially. So now when we are moving around, we're moving around revolve based on this object. Now when you want to change this, you can you can drag and hold. So I left clicked and held and dragged over all the objects on my plane and press fit to view here. Oh, oops, I accidentally unclicked. There we go. And now it's going to go ahead and, let us view this with reference to a middle point of all these objects. Now this is literally just the middle between these two objects, so it'll be about here. So it's revolving around this part approximately. And I can go ahead and view like that. So those are the basic viewing controls. Now when it comes to actually adding objects, you saw I just dragged in, but I'll show again. You can click any of these objects that already exist. You can either just click on it and then drag, or click and hold drag, and bring it on over to your screen. You can change the sides using the little cursors at the corners. So I'm just clicking and dragging. If you want to maintain the proportion, you can hold a corner and hold shift at the same time. Now, if I'm holding shift at the same time, it will only scale proportionally on all axes. So what that means is if I'm trying to make it the same size, I want to make sure I'm holding shift, then it's going to automatically do this. Easier to show than to describe with words. So that's how we add objects. You can edit them on each axis. So an axis is just like a plane of measurement. So we have like our x-axis here, we have our y-axis, and our z-axis is arguably the most important with 3D objects because this is how tall it is or how far it's coming out of the page, kind of. So this is our z-axis. So you can adjust how tall you want your objects to be using the z-axis. So that's essentially the main controls here. You can also do, if you want more exact measurements, which I don't recommend TinkerCAD if you want exact measurements. For that, you're going to want to head on over to SolidWorks or a more advanced software. But, if you just need something quick and it doesn't need to be exact and just be around 109 millimeters, for example, then this is totally fine. So there's my object. Now, what if I want to add something to my object? So maybe I want to add a heart to the top of this. We'll make it like a ring or something. I'm gonna make it bigger. Okay, so I have my ring. Now, you know, right now they're not actually joined together, so I can move these separately. But, you know, when you get into a little bit more complex things, it's a lot easier to just have them move as one object because, you know, we want this to be one object at the end of the day and not just two separate objects sitting on their own. So if I want to make it one object, first I'm going to make sure that it's overlapping a bit. So what I mean by that is they're essentially like squishing each other here. So it's basically, you know, they're touching. And if they're touching, then they can print as one object. And how we do this is we go ahead and left click and drag. We've selected all of our objects and we press this weird little square circle shape here. You could also press Control G and it'll group them together. So now this is actually one object. So now I have one object here that I can move around and edit as a whole. So you'll see when I make adjustments, it's making adjustments to the thing as a whole. So that's pretty interesting. Now, if at any point I'm editing and I realize, crap, I need to like adjust one of these two things, I can just click ungroup here and they'll go back to being their own objects. So that's probably one of the most advanced features on TinkerCAD, so it's definitely just for really basic things. However, it's really useful if you need to make quick edits to an existing file and you only have a .stl file, or like you don't have, you know, all of the ingredients, you only have the finished cake, if you will, of the STL file. You don't have all of the extrusions and these individual parts that you would in a SolidWorks file. That's when this gets a little bit handy if you need to make minor changes. So, you know, you can export this, and I recommend exporting as a .stl because this is readable by pretty much all 3D printing software and thus 3D printers. An OBJ file is a slightly more complex STL file. However, it's not necessarily readable by all 3D printing software. A .jlb I have yet to need in my life, but it's there if you need it. And then for laser cutting, it gets a little bit more complicated. And you know, you can export this actually as a vector file. So that's a 2D file of just the outline of your object. But I would this takes a little bit of playing around with. If you need an SVG from, you know, a 3D object, then just play around with it and see if you can get something you'll like. If you don't, you'll just have to make it in Illustrator. Now, if I want to do some more complex things with these objects, so let's say, for example, I put this object here, but really what I'm trying to get is a half sphere at the end, or like a half tube or torus at the end. Now, what I need to do is add what's called a hole. So a hole takes away from the object, and it looks like this gray lined part here. Now I can go ahead and make this hole really big so it covers all of my object, and then I can move it down by clicking this kind of circular arrow here and make sure it's covering the whole part that I want to get rid of. So this is essentially going to chop off whatever is in that grayed out zone. So, you know, once I have it how I want it, okay, it's covering that whole part that I want to remove, I can go ahead and click on all the objects and group them. And now you'll see it cut away, it basically added the negative space of the other half of this torus. So now I can move this around and use it as a half torus, which is a new shape that wasn't already provided. Now you can see you can create things very quickly using this. Again, if you realize, oh crap, you know, I actually need a little bit more of this shape, you can go ahead and ungroup and adjust your hole or your cut. So this, you can adjust the cut here. And then go ahead and group it again and you'll see the adjustments there. So it's actually, you know, it's not the most powerful tool, but it is a very convenient tool for simple things. And you can do the same thing with all sorts of different shapes that they show here. Like, I recommend just using the basic shapes. However, they have all sorts of different things that, you know, you can take a look at. Another helpful tool is the text tool. Now the text tool, if we click it here, will automatically just be the word text. However, I can change this to anything I want, so I could change this to Morgan. I also have 4 whole fonts to choose from. I know, a real selection. And I can change it to whatever font I want. Honestly, I think that like all these fonts are pretty ugly in my opinion, but I'd go with multi-language just because it looks classy. And now all of a sudden, look at my 3D file. I have some kind of depth going on here. Maybe I make this a little bigger and like I put it on top of here. That looks kind of cool. I don't know. You can play around with it, have fun with it. You can also, what I really like to do is import other people's files to edit. So, arguably the most important thing about TinkerCAD, in my opinion, is its ability to import Stl files and modify them quickly. So the best place to go to get other people's files, you don't have to make them yourself, or at least you don't have to do too much editing to them in order to get a workable file, is to go to thingiverse.com. Thingiverse.com is like the Bible of 3D objects and 3D design, in my opinion. So we can go ahead and in the search bar put whatever object we can think of. So let's say like a phone holder, for example. You'll see all sorts of different like things for phone holders. So I'm just gonna click on one that looks like a little bit more basic. Let me see if I can find a more basic one. Okay, here's a basic one. And if you click on it, you'll see, more information about it, but the important part is thing files. And you'll see that almost all of the time they'll have a .stl. That is what you want. You want a .stl. You can go ahead and download it. And then you'll have it in your downloads. Now, I'm going to go ahead and import this to Thingiverse. No, it didn't want to put it here. Okay, so I can go ahead and add this. So cell stand, there we go. Import it, whatever, dimensions it was before. And voila, I have this file in TinkerCAD, and now I can make really quick, inaccurate edits to it. What I mean by inaccurate is do not use TinkerCAD if you need precise measurements. It is not a precise software at all. So let's say I have this phone stand, and I didn't want it to be this wide. Let's say I actually wanted it to be like 70. Now it's 70. Now I can export it. That is the beauty of TinkerCAD. That was so easy. And another really easy thing to do is take parts away. So let's say I wanted this phone stand, but I didn't want this like loop at the top. I could just make a hole that's large enough to cover it, group them, and now I only have this part. So you can see it's really easy to make inaccurate, quick edits, as I keep saying. But I just love TinkerCAD for this reason. And then, so what else can we do with this? We can also add things to this. So let's say I have I'm just going to get rid of this, this hole for now. So I just press Control-Z to undo. And I'm going to go ahead and rotate this and bring it up. Oh, that's way too far up. Let's bring it back to 0. And then now I have my phone stand. Maybe I want to add my name to this. So I can add my name to this just by creating a text object. So my name, I have caps lock on. Just create my name. I can, adjust this to how I need. Also, if you want to get to exactly 135, 180, 90, or intervals of 45, hold Shift and it'll automatically take you to intervals of 45. So that's just a helpful feature. I'm going to go ahead and tilt it this way. Again, holding Shift. And now, okay, I've got it in the right orientation. Let's bring it up a little. Okay, it's too wide. You get the idea. I'm just going to edit this really quickly. That's the right size. And then I'm going to join them together so I see that, the word went into the phone stand, so that's what I want. And now I can go ahead and group them. And now it's one object, and now I have a customized phone stand with my name on it. Look at that. So that's essentially how you combine objects together, especially objects that other people have made. You can also do this with like combining multiple files that other people made. You can import way more than one. You can also like import the same file several times, like when you go to import and you choose the file that you want to do. You can import this as many times as you want. You can also just duplicate objects by hitting Control-Z, Control-V, so copy paste, and you can duplicate them, and move them around the screen and do whatever you're gonna do with them. And that I'm pretty sure. Let me just see here. Yeah, that's the basics of TinkerCAD. TinkerCAD is really fun for messing around with things. It's good for really basic, inaccurate designs, and it's helpful for, you know, removing parts or adding parts or small inaccurate customizations to any specific, you know, parts or things that other people have worked on. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you become a fan of TinkerCAD too, even though it is quite inaccurate. It is a very helpful tool and it's something nice to have in your toolbox when you're just learning 3D design.